Yeah, very ridiculous.
I still love the NWO, though. We have another podcast, me and Santiago do, called Local Trash, and he made T-shirts that look like the NWO logo, but it just has Big Dick Energy with the BDE.
Nice.
It's kind of funny.
Yeah. But I mean, and honestly, like the original iteration of the NWO with the Outsiders and Hulk Hogan, I mean, that was gold. And even like the first few people that they brought in, I mean, there was a reason that they dominated the ratings for 83 weeks. I mean, it was fantastic. And then it was too much like all of a sudden it just became, I mean, it just got out of hand, and it went from being something that was really cool to something that was crap.
Well, like
too much of a good thing often turns into a bad thing.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, when Virgil joined the NWO, it was over.
Yeah.
Like they didn't need him.
Yeah.
I even vaguely remember a Latino version of the NWO.
The LWO.
LWO, the Latin World Order.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that, actually.
Hold on, though, but y'all are sleeping on the BWO.
Oh, get out of here,
Blue World Order?
On the BWO. They slept on themselves.
But no, I guess to answer the actual question that was asked as far as wrestlers that made us want to get into the business, I'm going to have to stick with my two original wrestlers that I told Grason the day that I went to try out for Rampage. He asked me who my two favorite wrestlers were, and Macho Man Randy Savage and Roddy Piper. So, and that was I started watching them at WWE, and I followed them to WCW. So, yeah, I think that they were probably two of the, like, just listening to them talk, whether they were good guys or bad guys at the time, I loved them, both of them. So,
what about y'all? So I'm old, very, very old, and I remember Sting before he had any of the black or white or red and black face paint.
Surfer Sting.
Where he went with Warriors. Yep. I remember all that stuff. And Sting was always one of my favorites, but the guys that really stood out to me were Undertaker, Kane, Mankind. I love Mick Foley. I like all his characters, honestly. But your mask kind of reminds me of Kane, honestly, a little bit. The original one.
You and everybody else.
Oh, the original one that I wore was straight up Kane.
Yeah.
It was designed, and that one I had made myself. And it was completely designed off of the Kane mask. It just didn't have the mouthpiece. So it was open. And that was a straight up Kane mask, and I tried to get away from that because I didn't want to be Indie Kane.
So now he's Casey Jones.
Hey, there ain't no. You wish you could be Casey Jones. You and your pink
I do
booty.
wish I could be Casey Jones.
For my answer to the question is the kind of hard. This is a tough question for me to answer because it's different. Like, I have my favorite wrestlers, and then I have the reason I became a wrestler. The reason, or the wrestlers that made me want to become wrestlers, and it's like let me say this again. There's the wrestlers that made me want to become a wrestler, and then there's the wrestlers that made me realize I could become a wrestler. So I'll answer it twice. The wrestlers that made me want to become wrestlers are like, probably, I'm with you. The Sting, the first time I saw Sting come down from the rafters, I didn't see him in the red and black. I saw him in the white and black. And I had seen him go away from Surfer Sting and turn his back on the fans and all that. Like, that was one of the first things I ever saw of WCW. And whenever I saw him later, like, come down in the black and white, I thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I'd never seen the Crow movies or anything. So I thought that was like the craziest thing I'd ever seen, you know? And that made me want, I was like, I want to do that. I want to drop from the rafters and beat the crap out of people with a baseball bat, you know? And then, the people that made me realize, I think that, like, I was like, oh, I could actually do this, would be like, Owen Hart, only because the way that he carried himself. He wasn't, and especially in that time, he's a lot bigger than me now. But at the time, he comparative to the guys he was wrestling with, he wasn't that big. And then Chris Jericho. And Chris Jericho's a big dude too. But again, the size difference in him and those guys that he was working. I realized, like, man, I think I'm like, they can do that. They're not huge. They're not 350 pounds. They're not 250 pounds. They're not 6'4", and they're doing that. And especially when Jericho won the world title and the WWF and the WCW title the same night, that like really made me like, man, I really like. Not only could I do this like on any level, but like I could be a champion somewhere because he did it, you know. And again, like I'm not trying to compare myself to Chris Jericho at all. I'm saying as a fan at that point, I was like, this guy can do it, I can do it. As a wrestler now, I look at Chris Jericho and I don't think that. I'm like, that dude's 1 in a million, and I couldn't put on his fucking house shoes.
GOAT.
Yeah, for real.
And he's doing a lot now. He's got like a.
Say, if Spike Dudley can do it, I can do it.
That's funny. And Chris Jericho. Go ahead.
Honestly, like if we're talking about who said, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. I've been told my entire life I wanted to be a wrestler ever since I was a kid.
Yeah. And
I was told always, no, you're not ever going to be big enough. You're not going to be strong enough. You can't do that. And I know a guy who used to wrestle by the name of Damian Wood. And he was on a show with Erik Grason and Luchador Americano. And I went out to go see that show because my friend was wrestling on it. And watching those guys and seeing those guys. So I'm actually going to give credit to Grayson for the reason that I'm actually wrestling now. Because Grayson's not the biggest dude in the room. But he can wrestle. And showed me that I could do that. And it was shortly after seeing him that I actually started training.
You know, I remember that show. That was I can't remember the name of that show, but I remember that show. I wrestled Americano, didn't I, on that show?
Yeah, and okay. You got color, and that was one of the nights that red meant green. Yeah. Because that was one of the best matches of the night because nobody was expecting the color.
Yes. So I'm going to tell a short story about this night real fast. So and red meant grain, but it wasn't a whole lot of grain. It was more like copper and silver. It was like pennies and dimes, but that's okay.
But you got like 6 slices of pizza, so it's fine.
It did, yeah. No, I got a bonus that night for sure. So we've got messaged by this guy in Sweetwater. Everything all right?
Sounded like a motorcycle.
Yeah, it did. Axel, are you on a motorcycle?
Did we lose Axel?
Yeah, I think maybe. Was he in a wreck?
I hope not.
Me too. It sounded like a car starting. I saw on a motorcycle.
Yeah, anyway, that was weird.
I'm gonna continue with my story because there's people listening.
Maybe he was
gone. Huh? Now he's gone. Maybe he has a baby. He's got a newborn baby. Maybe his baby sounds like a motorcycle when it cries.
I don't know. That's coronavirus, man. We might want to go over the mics.
Maybe. Yeah. Well, let's go wash our hands. All right. So anyway, so this guy messages us and he's like, "Hey, I want you guys to come down for a show and whatever." So he's like, "Can you bring some people?" So we brought some people, and we get down there and he's telling us what's the deal. He's like, "Hey, you guys are. I don't think we're the main event, but I think we're the co-main event." And so we go out there, we look at the ring, and this ring, literally, I'm not kidding, didn't have a full canvas. Only part of it was covered. Only part of it was padded. There was actual wood showing. Like, the fans could see the wood. We could wrestle and stand on the wood in parts of it. And I would say there was, like, probably 40 people there. Maybe, Alton? Is that right?
Yeah, there were 40, 50, maybe.
Yeah. And so me and
but I'm going to say that the wood showing actually made it, because so many people are like, hey, wrestling is so fake, it's a trampoline, blah, blah, blah. It's not, by the way. but the boards actually showing kind of legitimized it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
I mean, I wouldn't want to wrestle in that ring again.
Yeah.
But
that was some of the worst bumps I ever took in my whole life.
I trained in that ring, bro.
Yeah, no. We bought that ring, bro. Anyway, so we go out there and do our match, and we're going to it, and the fans are reacting, and I tell Americano, I'm like, hey man, give me the post. I'm like, they're kind of dead, and we need to bring them up. So I'm like, give me the post. So he gives me the post, and I get color. And the fans are like, oh, like, man, he's freaking bleeding. So and it wasn't like a gusher, it was just a little bit of blood. And we get back in the ring, and the finish was an attitude adjustment off the top rope, and I took it. Americano gave it to me, and whenever I landed, I didn't land where there was the padding. I landed on the wood, and I landed on my hip, and so God. For like 5 slices of pizza, I didn't walk right for like 8 days.
They paid you in pizza?
Yeah, pretty much. No, no, they didn't pay. They paid me real money, but it wasn't enough for the pain I endured that evening. That was for sure.
The bonus was pizza.
Yeah, but that's a common theme in wrestling, man. Like wrestling's like music, and like baseball used to be. Like wrestlers do not. I mean, this doesn't speak for all wrestlers. There are some indie wrestlers out there that make, a small living off of wrestling. But as a whole, indie wrestlers, especially in Texas, don't make money. It's like less than $50 you're getting paid for your match. So which is a lot like music. A lot of these bands go out there and some perform for free just to try to get exposure. 17, 18, 20 people. So it's kind of rough. So. If you're listening, go support your local indie wrestlers.
Very first show I ever worked, we drove to Minnesota, and I did a show. It was a benefit show for some kids who were very sick. So I had no problem working for basically free because it was a benefit show for kids. But we went all the way to Minnesota, and my payment was a shot and a beer.
Oh, man.
Golly.
And that was one night that I full on got super kicked in the face by Jester, and that sucked.
Yeah. He has a habit of being a little snugger than he should be.
So, while we're talking about wrestling, whenever I edit this episode, I'll do like this Michael Buffer intro for y'all. That's why I had Erik send me the stats of y'all so I could legitimize it and all that. But I looked up like the dude's name so I could like tell him what I was trying to do. This dude, Michael Buffer, okay, he copyrighted the Let's Get Ready to Rumble in 1992, right?
Yeah.
Since then, he's made $400 million off that phrase.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy, right?
Yeah.
4 words.
So that's just like people paying him to use it, huh?
Yeah. Well, I guess that would be his brother or maybe his wife. I can't remember his brother's name. Like Brandon Buffer or something like that. But yeah, I think he started it in boxing and he moved on and he started doing WCW too. He might have been in WWE. I can't remember. I wasn't allowed to watch WWE back in the day.
His brother's the
UFC. He did WCW. I know he did WCW.
Yeah, and he was actually on the Ready to Rumble movie. He did the whole shtick there too.
Well, and I know that a lot of sports, like a lot of sports venues, license that and use that in the stadium.
That's awesome. Do y'all have like a specific venue y'all always go to, or do y'all just go to wherever y'all can?
What do you say it again? Sorry,
like whenever. Oh, well, whenever y'all go and do like a performance or have like a show, is there a specific venue y'all are always at, or do y'all just go like in Lubbock? Specific, like, is there different venues y'all use, or is it just one?
Oh, okay. For us, for Rampage in Lubbock, we use different venues. We've run at the Boys and Girls Club. There's multiple clubs in Lubbock, and we've run almost all of them We've